To any open wheel fan, the name Rick Mears has to be mentioned anytime the circuit heads to Indianapolis. Born in Wichita, Kansas, Mears moved to and grew up in Bakersfield, California. He, like most West Coasters at the time, got his start in off-roading, where through that avenue, he was able to find open wheel opportunities. Eventually, Mears was hired by veteran car owner Roger Penske, which gave him his best shot ever at success. By 1979, open wheel had found itself in its first ever split. CART became a sanctioning body for open wheel when much of the big team owners became upset over rule changes in USAC. The 1979 Indianapolis 500 became the most controversial ever, with the countless lawsuits and background politicking behind who could race and who wouldn't. Mears and his Penske team were originally barred from competition before winning a suit to let them race. Mears appeared to be one of the favorites all throughout the month of May, when he won the pole for the event and dominated the opening practices. During the race, he quickly fell back on the start, and he loomed throughout the day until about 20 to go, when he passed by Bobby Unser and claimed his first Indianapolis 500. Through all the controversy, Rick proved early on to be one of the next speedway greats in open wheel. In 1980, he finished top 5 again in the greatest spectacle in auto racing, and his 1981 bid ended early, perhaps one of the scariest pit mishaps ever. Mears came in for a regular stop when the fuel nozzle malfunctioned and doused the cockpit in ethanol. Quickly, the cockpit was engulfed in flames, but nobody knew that Rick was on fire. He jumped out of the car and ran frantically, trying to have somebody help him. People would run up to aid the burning Mears and catch themselves on fire, unaware of the catastrophe Mears was in. The reason why no one realized he was on fire was that ethanol burns a clear flame, so nobody could actually see that he was on fire. Rick was eventually put out by his father, realizing that something was wrong with Rick, as he doesn't panic like that when he gets out of his car. All the scariness aside, his 81 bid was cut short, but in 1982, Mears won his second Indy 500 pole and led 77 laps. But with another 10 laps to go, he found himself in perhaps one of the greatest battles in Indy 500 history.
Sam, we've got a trophy dash to the finish line. If this stays this way, there's never been anything like it. The closest finish in the history of Indianapolis was in 1937, 2.16 seconds. There's Dina Mears. Her man is the man that's closing on the leader.
Yep, look at Mears pour it on, Jim. I know when you're this close, I mean, you can reach out, you can feel that guy ahead of you. And look at Mears now. Here's John Cox taking a fairly moderate line, and Mears is catching him. Look at his speed off that turn.
I've never seen anything like it. There they go. 2 laps to go. There's time to catch him if he can do it. Rick Mears, his wife. The stopwatch, 0.63 seconds between them.
I don't have to tell you what's going to happen if he catches him. It's going to be, I mean, this is an extremely dangerous business right here.
I don't think I've ever seen an open wheel car race with people this close at the finish.
No, and never so fast. I mean, these laps in the high 190.
Look at this.
Dina there. All right.
He may do it.
Yeah, he may. He's that close. Look at that shallow line.
They're going to get the white flag. There'll be 1 lap to go. As he moves along, tries for John Cox. Is he going to do it? The white flag out. This is the final lap.
Going down into the first turn. What? No. Gordon held him off there going into that first turn.
Over the roar of the engine, you can hear the 400,000 people going hoarse.
All right.
No one has ever seen this before in Indianapolis.
This is the back straight, Jim. There's just 2 turns to go now. Mears behind, and he's again trying to slipstream it.
John Cox did a good job of staying ahead of him in turn 1 when he made that move there.
Good. That was brilliant.
Enough.
That was brilliant.
Not quite over. John Cox still with the lead.
Here it comes
Headed
again.
for the finish line. He's still closing. That's his wife.
It's too late now. You only got to pray. Look at that.
Here you see them. Mears, can he make a move at the finish? He's making a move. No, not quite. John Cox.
Less than 5 attempts into his Indy 500 career, and Mears had already inserted himself into history on at least 2 occasions. In 1983, he started front row again, and finished 3rd after leading 2 laps in the event. In 1984 repeated his qualifying result, but this time Rick dominated the race. He led 119 to 200 laps, and let no one in front of him for the final 56. He claimed his 2nd Indy 500 win. In 1985, Rick had his most lackluster run yet, at 21st place out on lap 122 for a linkage issue. 1986 was a return to normal. He broke the official track record and won his 3rd Indy 500 pole. He joined Danny Sullivan and Michael Andretti on the front row, and Rick was again highly competitive in the race. He fought for the victory all the way to 15 to go. Catching lap traffic, he slowed just enough for Rahal and Kogan to slip by. While he was unable to catch back up to him, he did finish third, but Bobby Rahal and Kevin Kogan fought amongst themselves for the victory. In 1987, Rick started front row alongside Bobby Rahal and Mario Andretti. Rick was quiet all day and fell out before halfway because of a coil wire. In 1988, Mears fired back with his 4th pole for the event, setting a new unofficial track record. He also led the charge of an all-Penske front row, the first time in history that had happened. Mears, like many times before this, dominated the day, this time with early on favorite Danny Sullivan. Sullivan, however, made a catastrophic mistake off of turn 1.
Down the straightaway to go. Well, here is the number 1 car of Al Unser, currently running in 3rd place. Rick Mears currently runs in 2nd. Danny Sullivan cracks the wall. Danny Sullivan, he had a glorious hit again. He has no control over that car. Ricochets off the wall again, and the yellow flag comes out.
With little competition, Mears went on to win his 3rd Indy 500 that year. 1989 started Rick's pursuit of the elusive 4-win club. And what better way to kick it off than by winning his 5th pole for the 500. That pole put him alone at the top of all-time poles for the event, an achievement he still holds to this day. Ultimately for Rick, he fell back early and pulled out of the race because of engine issues just past halfway. At the turn of the decade, Rick again started in the front row for Team Penske, before ultimately falling to 5th by race finish. 1991 marked the 75th running of the 500-mile event, and perhaps one of the most historic runnings ever.
Off of the gravel pit into the kink and toward Canada Corner.
That carousel was a graphic description of just how much better Michael's car handles over Cheever. Look at Danny Sullivan, though, trying to get through this traffic. Sullivan catches him.
Car well off the course and over the mound. We don't have an identity yet. Fire back, and looks like an engine turbocharger fire, though, as we can see just the tip of the helmet, and that's AJ Foyt.
Before the month of May had even started, one of the biggest headlines for the race had already developed. AJ Foyt the year prior had been injured badly in a crash at Road America. Foyt needed to take months of rehab over the offseason to be able to race in 1991. And it was then that he announced that the 1991 Indy 500 was planned to be his last. Even controversy around the pace car set up headlines for the event, as the Dodge Stealth was picked as the official car. However, people were infuriated, as the Stealth, while under an American manufacturer, the car itself was actually developed by Mitsubishi in Japan. They decided to swap it out with the Dodge Viper RT10, and the Stealth became the backup. The pace car driver was selected to be Carroll Shelby, after having a heart transplant. The thought was that he'd be the first man to drive a car after that type of procedure. And for the race itself, the first practice was on the 26th of April. It started 3 scheduled days of rookie orientation practice. However, the 3rd day was rained out. On the 4th of May, official scheduled practice began for the next 7 days preparing for pole day. But the first 2 days of practice were rained out. And finally, practice began on the first Monday of May. The first 2 days were led by Rick Mears, and by Thursday, Kevin Kogan topped overall times with a 226.677 mile lap. On Friday, perhaps one of the most shocking events happened for the month of May in 1991. Rick Mears, the man who had been flawless at Indianapolis for well over a decade, made his first error and destroyed his car. It marked the first time Rick had ever hit the wall at the Speedway, and the best qualifier in Indy history had now injured his right foot and had to wait for doctors to clear him to race. While Mears' crash was not anything to scoff at, he didn't have the worst crash of Fast Friday.
The event crashed at 215 miles an hour. Mark Dismore was going flat out when his car clipped a wall as he prepared for the start of time trials for the race.
Rookie Mark Dismore touched the outside retaining wall in turn 4 and broke his rear suspension. He spun hard into the inside wall, shooting a back out into the direction of the pit wall. He smashed the wall, splitting his car in 2, severely injuring him in the process. Mark would not attempt an open wheel race until the next year's Indy 500, and for track design during the incident, it exposed the necessity to remove the furthest up pit stalls and move them further down the straightaway. It put nearly 30 more yards of space between the pit crews and on-track action, and it made sure that a crashing car wouldn't cause a worst-case scenario. May 11th marked pole day, and AJ Foyt kicked off the humid morning with a 4-lap average of 222.443 miles an hour. Many people came on track before quickly waving off their runs, making only 8 people officially qualified by noon. Eventually, in the quiet came injured Rick Mears, who laid down the marker of 2:24.113. It locked him into the pole position, and the track sat quiet for yet another 3 hours. It wasn't until 4 p.m. when Emerson Fittipaldi made his run at the pole. The crew waved him off 3/4 through a second-place run, as they thought the car was one adjustment away from the pole. But as John Andretti pulled on track, rain clouds loomed overhead, and lightning strikes soon rained over the speedway. The rest of qualifying was rained out, and having only 12 drivers officially take time, the front row was set. Rick Mears sat on his record 6th pole, and AJ Foyt, going for a record 5 wins and possibly his last start at the speedway, rolls off 2nd. And in 3rd place was Mario Andretti, trying to yet again end his curse and what could possibly be his family's curse at the speedway. After another week of practice and a 2nd week of qualifying, the 33-car field was set. In the field after a dramatic bump day was really T. Ribbs, the first black driver to start in the race. Hiro Matsushita was also making storylines as the first Japanese-born driver in the event. And lastly, Gordon Johncock made it in as the last person on bump day. And with that, Carb Day was the last scheduled on-track event, before the 26th of May. A rainy May morning set the mood for the day's activities. The start has been slightly delayed because of the track drying, but the race shall still be run. AJ Foyt in his last 500 going for 5 wins, 4 Andretti's racing the event, Willie T. Ribbs, Hiro Matsushita, and the drive for 4 from Rick Mears. Jim Neighbors serenades the crowd of nearly 500,000 before the command is given and the drivers roll off the grid.
They say it now. Gentlemen, start your engine.
Sullivan, already on the pace laps, can't get his car going, and the team goes into a panic to try and fix the issue. Carroll Shelby leads the beasts of current and future technology around the track, as the drivers take in the conditions of the track for the first time. With Sullivan still stuck on pit road, the 32 cars fly by to take the green.
In the pit area, they begin to slide the cover back on Danny Sullivan's car as the field approaches turn 3 on the pace lap. And Indianapolis tradition tends to rule. The field should go green at the conclusion of this lap, and Danny Sullivan will start the race rolling from the pits. Michael Andretti, as the pace picks up, they're off in the 4th turn. The pole sitter, Rick Mears, brings the field down. Carroll Shelby has the Viper off of the course. And the Queen's Mini Street 5, the 75th Indy 500 is underway. Rick Mears comes to the lead. Mario Andretti closes in behind as AJ Foyt fades. And there is an accident coming off of the 4th turn.
Immediately as the bombs go off, debris showers the turn 1 exit. The first caution has come out, and for the first time, Mears leads the first lap of the race from the pole. Gary Bettenhausen comes in early and changes the tires in pursuit of his family's first glory of Indy. Meanwhile, the car involved was Buddy Lazier, and the nose is gone, and the team begins to find a solution. Both Gary and Buddy went low on the apron and drove through washed-off debris from rain, which caused them to spin. The race eventually restarts with Mears getting pressure from Andretti, but he holds him at bay for the meantime. Early in the run, Willie T. Ribbs comes in, and the team begins to treat a possible mechanical issue on the car. Currently, the wind is blowing parallel to the straightaways, causing speeds of almost 230 miles an hour in the turn 3. Lazier's team meanwhile shoves the car back to the garage. They are done for the day. Lap traffic now smatters the race for lead positions, as Al Unser Jr. and AJ Foyt battle for spots. Little Al uses the lap traffic to get a run and get past Foyt, and at the front, Rick Mears lets Mario by for the lead. As soon as he falls to 2nd, he's in the clutches of Michael Andretti now, who gets him for 3rd. Now that Michael's moved past the pole sitter, it officially makes it an Andretti 1-2 at the front of the field now. On the pit lane, the lifelong dream of Willie T. Ribbs has virtually come to an end. The mechanical issue has been discovered as a broken cylinder, and the team is trying desperately to find out which one it is. Regardless if they can even get the car running, his dream of contending, let alone winning the race, is all but virtually over. During the ribs diagnosis, Eddie Cheever slows and brings out a yellow. Nearly everybody is pitting, taking tires and fuel, and soon after the race restarts. During this, one of the biggest plot twists of the race occurs. Roberto Guerrero has destroyed his car. Kevin Kogan is also heavily damaged, and AJ Foyt has sustained moderate front suspension damage as well. It is more than likely enough damage to do AJ in, and in the aura of possibly one of the greatest drivers' last competitive laps around the speedway he ruled, he waves goodbye to the fans.
And AJ is waving. Is he saying goodbye?
Yeah, I think it might be that.
The crowd saluting one of the greatest drivers ever in the history of the sport. Is this the last moment? What a terrible way for AJ to end an Indianapolis career when this day held so much promise.
You can see it's bent pretty bad because the left front tire doesn't turn, Paul. It's off of the ground when he's going straight. So it's bad. Unless they want to do a real long repair job, it's the only way they can get him back in.
The field leaves AJ behind. The crowd stands to salute the grand champion as he rolls down off the fourth turn and into the pits.
Meanwhile, during the heartwarming moment, Kevin Kogan is in trouble. The caution is long as Kogan is stretchered out of his car and brought to a local hospital. Whilst he is medevaced away from the speedway, the race goes back green as the Andretti's lead, with Michael taking it. As they run, 4 of the top 10 are Andretti's, possibly their best shot ever to end the Andretti curse. Mears on the restart is having issues. The car is extremely tight and is having a terrible time trying to keep it out of the wall. Rick is on the radio, keeping calm and ensuring the team everything will be fine. And near the front, Bobby Rahal and teammate Al Unser Jr. race hard through traffic. The race progresses along, with Michael putting nearly 8 seconds on his father. And finally, a report has been released regarding Guerrero and Kogan. Both are awake and alert, but Kogan is complaining of pain in his legs and arms, but is in stable condition. On track, pit stops begin, with Mario getting away slow and having minor issues on his stop. Michael comes in next and has a near flawless pit stop. And Little Al comes in afterwards, with Rick Mears behind him. By the 125-mile mark, Michael Andretti still leads with an average speed of over 165 miles an hour. Talks about rain bubble up as they work toward the official race mark at lap 101. As the field cycles out, a swarm of cars race hard, with Bettenhouse flying past Rahal using his engine boost. The Penske cars meanwhile fight for the 5th spot, and soon John Andretti joins the slugfest as the slower speeds create tight racing for mid-pack spots. Michael Andretti soon laps Arie Luyendyk, who sits 9th, now 1 lap behind the leaders. Next is John Andretti to lap, which creates a logjam of cars for Michael to go through. After John on track is Rick Mears, who is less than 100 yards away from being lapped. Gary Bettenhouse, fighting to not lose another lap, helps Rick slip away. Eventually Andretti pits again with his father, and Little Al cycles to the lead, as teams are getting much worse fuel mileage than originally estimated. Fittipaldi comes in under this cycle as well, and takes 4 tires in a moderately slow stop. Al Unser Jr. is the next in, with teammate Bobby Rahal. Al wins the race off with Rahal right behind him, and on Bobby's camera, rain starts to collect as teams begin to get antsy. Right when rain is reported, Taro Pomeroth combusts and slows the pace. The fuel fire causes a minor mess on the inside of the backstretch, and the clouds actually begin to lighten up under the caution. The race goes back green on lap 90, and cars space out shortly after. Gary Bettenhouse slows and rolls his 51 car down the pit lane. It is some sort of mechanical issue, and his day is now virtually over. Nearly halfway now, and Rahal and Unser race hard again, with Rick Mears hanging around them. Coming to lap 105, Mario Andretti pits his car, as the speeds start to exceed over 220 miles an hour. Hiro Matsushita makes a stop, still holding strong, representing his homeland of Japan. And then Michael Andretti's in, and has a very smooth pit stop, handing the lead over to Emerson Fittipaldi. As Fittipaldi makes his pit during the cycle, the officials hand out a penalty that is perhaps earth-shattering. Mario Andretti has been penalized 1 lap for driving below the yellow line too many times in turn 4, effectively taking him out of the race. Unser and Rahal come in with Rick Mears, and the black flag gets officially shown to Mario. Andretti is unbelievably furious about the situation, as almost every person has been doing the same thing that Mario has been penalized for. Nonetheless, Mario has been put behind the race leader Emerson Fittipaldi, and the leader now has put 9 seconds on Mario's son Michael. Soon Bobby Rahal has his engine let go, and both team cars of Rahal and Al Unser Jr. have now reported engine issues. A few laps later, Michael Andretti starts off the next cycle with Fittipaldi in the next lap later. They have a pit equipment malfunction, which slows his stop by 3 seconds. And now Rick Mears has taken the lead, and has stayed out an additional 2 laps before he pits. After the cycle, cars seem to start to drop like flies. Danny Sullivan is in the pits with problems, and Scott Brayton combusts on the backstretch. He can't even make it to the pit lane as he parks his car on the track and bails out of the burning machine. The caution soon comes out, and under the yellow, Emerson Fittipaldi reports to the crew that the car has burnt out the clutch, which means he'll need to push to get out of his stall. The Dodge Viper pace car slams the gas to the pit lane and unleashes the pack on the restart. Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti race side by side in the 1, and Michael gets the lead. Andretti is soon approaching the final 40 laps, 100 miles left to determine the Indy 500. 2 Penske cars now stock the lone Andretti at the front now. His brother Jeff Andretti blows an engine during this duel, but he keeps it going, getting to the pit lane. Andretti finally starts to gap the Penskes. With just about 35 laps to go, the pit stops loom. It'll set up the final run home, and while the fuel window is close, each driver will be able to make it from here on out. Andretti comes in first and rolls to his stall. 4 fresh tires and a full tank of fuel takes about 19 seconds, and now it's time for Fittipaldi. Emerson, with his damaged clutch, comes in with 31 to go. He comes in with a phenomenal speed and parks in the stall. The fuel and tires go on, and now the moment of truth. He tries to gun it, and rolls slowly off the pit lane. The 5 car struggles to get going, and with the assistance of the crew, he gets speed. Although he's rolling now, his shot is surely over. Mears is the last to pit of the front 3, and has a spotless stop, and Michael Andretti clears by easily though. Fittipaldi, meanwhile, has slowed back down on the backstretch, as his run is certainly all but over now. As when he pulled out of his stall, he stripped every single gear in the transmission, putting a period on the day. A caution then comes out not for Emerson, but for Danny Sullivan having engine issues. With less than 20 to go, Rick Mears is caught back up under yellow to Michael Andretti, and both men need to have the restart of their careers if they want to win the 75th Indy 500. The green flag in hand and the Dodge Viper on the pit lane, Michael Andretti and Rick Mears go for it.
And Rick Mears comes around John Andretti. He's no factor whatsoever, but Michael is right there with him. Michael moving to the outside. Can he keep in the high groove? He did it in Phoenix. Can he do it here? Michael Andretti takes the lead away from Rick Mears. Wow!
That's one of the toughest passes I've ever seen. A short shoot pass with 2 cars running nearly the same speed. I'll just bet you that Rick Mears thought that would have been impossible, and I just can tell you, he never ever looked for Michael to go that way.
Michael Andretti takes the lead, and now Rick needs to pull off something heroic to pass the persistent Andretti.
Pieces of driving, one of the hardest pieces of driving I've seen, and Sam, it's very difficult to pass somebody on the outside like that, and especially a car that's just as bad.
And from Bobby Under's point of view, a position on the track that he was not expected. But here is Rick Mears now in the same position as Mears, who has been driving a very fair line. As Rick takes Michael Andretti 187 laps into the record book. The fight is at the front.
In a showing of max bravery and confidence, Rick Mears and his 3 car charges ahead down the backstretch, and Michael needs to fire back as soon as possible if he wants to win. The man who has been flawless till this year at the Speedway is trying to prove number 4 is all but 30 miles away. Whilst the second place runner Michael Andretti wants to prove the curse that plagued his father for 2 decades won't infect his 500 career as well. Rick legs it now, putting nearly a short shoot on Michael, until a caution. Mario Andretti has stalled, and it's going to give Michael one last charge at Mears. A 6-lap shootout, Mears versus Andretti. It's go time.
But he's lost 2 of the closest in history to John Cock by 16 100ths of a second in 82, and by 2 seconds to Rahal in 86.
The point is, he is no stranger to close finishes. Michael Andretti has never been involved with a battle for the lead in the Indy 500 when it counted. It counts now.
6 laps to go.
Rick really got to run out at that time at the restart, Paul. He wasn't going to let Michael sneak up on him. He didn't have any traffic to worry about, nor did Michael.
Look at that. There are so few cars left in the race. Rick has a completely clean racetrack ahead of him and will for probably 3 to 4 laps.
Rick's great restart lets him run away, and Michael pushes desperately, watching the red and white Penske chassis shrink more and more in his foreground. As Rick circles the speedway, the crowd stands up, knowing another man is about to pass into history.
The crowd anticipates a potential 4-time win for Rick. Michael Andretti in a desperate drive to try and catch him.
On a day that sees what may be the retirement from competition by the great four-time winner, AJ Foyt, we may see another four-time winner crowned in Rick Mears.
And the white flag has been thrown to Rick Mears, indicating 1 lap to go. Now less than 2 miles for Rick Mears. If he holds on, he will become the third four-time winner of the Indianapolis 500 here on the 75th running of the great race. Chris Mears and Rick runs the straightaway. One corner left to go. One corner left to run. You can see the checkered flag just ahead of him now. A four-time winner of the 500.
Rick, congratulations. Being offered again by Chris. It is absolutely crazy up here today. Rick, congratulations on that restart. Not the last one, but the one before. Michael Andretti blew by you. And then it was like just another lap, and you said nothing doing. What was going through your mind?
Well, that was that last lap I usually talk about, or the last end of the race. That's when you do it when it's necessary. And we got down there and we had a run at him from a little toe on the straightaway. And I said, oh, there's nothing to lose now. We got to go or not. And so I just went ahead and ran it up on top and went around the outside. And we were thankful. The car was working just absolutely great. And it just, everything went our way. When it's your day, it's your day. What can I say?
You have been so close in several of your victories that you were denied. The Gordon Johncock one comes to mind. You have said before that if you hadn't maybe made a mistake there, this could have been your 5th Indianapolis 500.
Well, that's, we found out we went 1 lap too early on that race, and it caught us out short. We should have had it, but it wasn't our turn. So, I mean, I tell you, I'm tickled to death. I never dreamed of getting 1 here, let alone 3, let alone 4. So, I'm just tickled to death. Tell you, the Oro guys, the team did a tremendous job. I mean, this is our backup car. Shows you how good our backup car is, and they just did a hell of a job. The Goodyear tires worked great along, and obviously the Chevy was strong when we got to run at Michael. So, we're just excited. I don't know what to say.
What many didn't realize is that in the moment of post-race celebration ceremony, Rick would only run the race one more time. He attempted it the next year in 1992, crashing out before reaching halfway. And he had a private conversation with his wife and brother before coming out during the Penske Christmas party at the end of '92. There he stated that he is officially retired from open-wheel racing.